XRP ETF explained, spot versus futures, impact on XRP's adoption and price, a beginner's guide. Let's do it. Hey guys, Frank the Crypto Tank here, and today we're diving into XRP ETF. If you're curious about Ripple's XRP ETF and what it could mean for the future of XRP and its price, you're in the right place. Did you know there are nearly 20 XRP ETF filings now waiting for SEC approval? Yeah. Yep. Almost 19 different XRP ETF proposals have been submitted to the SEC regulators. It's a big deal, and it could be a game changer for crypto. In this video, I'll explain to you what's going on with these XRP ETFs, in plain English, the difference between a spot ETF and a futures ETF, and why it matters for XRP's adoption, price, legitimacy moving forward. We're going to basically paint a picture of XRP's three-year outlook, three-year roadmap, and different scenarios. Whether we get a futures ETF or a spot ETF or both, we'll probably get both. I think we will. By the end, you're finally going to understand certain terms like XRP Spot ETF versus futures ETF. I felt lost in the beginning too, but just stick around and we're going to cover this. We're going to try to do the best that we can to eliminate the technical bullshit on this. By the end of the video, hopefully you're going to walk away knowing more about crypto and ETFs than 90% of people. Okay, so sound good? All right, let's dive in. What the heck is an ETF anyway? An ETF is an exchange-traded fund. Think of it like basically a big basket of assets that trade on stock exchanges like regular stock. That's the best way to explain it. It could hold anything, commodities like stocks, gold, oil, okay, even cryptocurrency. When you buy a share of an ETF, you're basically buying a tiny slice of that basket, essentially. Okay, so for example, a gold ETF usually holds real gold bars in a vault. So if you buy a share, you indirectly own a bit of that gold without needing the vault to be at home. A crypto ETF works the same way in theory, but instead of gold bars, the basket holds various crypto assets. Okay, so something that like tracks crypto prices. ETFs are popular because they make investing easy and accessible to people. You can buy and sell them through regular brokerage account. No need to mess with specialized exchanges or wallets and things like that. So for crypto beginners, basically an XRP ETF means you can invest in XRP in an easy way, without getting into all the everything. Without getting into the wallets and worrying about losing your private keys. So it's like XRP investing, you're just like hitting the easy button on it and just setting it. Okay. Not all ETFs are created equal. Okay. So there are two flavors we need to talk about when we talk about XRP. You got a spot ETF and you got a future ETF. These terms might sound intimidating, but let's not worry here. I'm going to break this down. What's an XRP futures ETF versus what's an XRP spot ETF? Okay. And why does it matter? All right. To answer this, let's use a fun analogy here. Let's take pizza. Who likes pizza? Everybody loves pizza. Okay. So spot XRP ETF, the analogy is this. The pizza delivery, imagine you're ready, you're so hungry, you want pizza so badly, you got it in your mind, you call up the pizzeria, you order the pizza delivery, and when it arrives, you have real pizza in your hand that you can eat. Okay, a spot XRP ETF is just like that. It involves owning the real thing. Okay, and a spot XRP ETF, the fund, basically buys actual XRP tokens and holds them in custody, like storing pizzas in a pizza box, basically. Okay. It's an analogy. The ETF's price directly tracks the market price of XRP, okay, because it literally holds XRP in the basket. Okay. So if you invest in a spot XRP ETF, you essentially have exposure to the real XRP. Okay. You just let the fund handle buying and storing it for you. Okay. In other words, a spot ETF tracks the underlying asset's price by holding the asset itself. Okay. You get the real pizza. Okay, Futures XRP ETF, the pizza coupon analogy. Okay, now imagine you really want that pizza. Okay, but instead of getting it delivered now, you buy a coupon that says I can get a pizza for $10 1 month from now, and that coupon's value basically will go up or down depending on the price of pizza, ingredients, and demand and so forth concerning pizza. Maybe next month pizza prices skyrocket, let's just say, and your coupon becomes super valuable because you locked in at a cheap price earlier on, right? But you never actually hold the pizza until you redeem the coupon. Okay, so a futures ETF, it basically works like this. It doesn't hold real XRP directly. Instead, it holds futures contracts, which are financial coupons, basically, if you will, that bet on XRP's future price. Okay, so these contracts might, let's say, buy or sell XRP at X price on a future date, and then the futures ETF's value moves the price of XRP, but the fund itself isn't storing the XRP tokens. Okay, so it's trading those contracts, basically. So you get exposure to XRP's price without holding the actual asset. And it's like you own the right to a future pizza, not the pizza itself, for earlier agreed on price. In summary, spot equals hold, and real XRP futures equals holds contracts tied to XRP's price. That's the difference. Both aim to let you profit if XRP's price goes up, but the mechanics differ. A spot XRP ETF physically, or rather digitally, holds XRP. If one share of the ETF equals, say, 1 XRP, then the fund actually has an XRP in cold storage somewhere for each share. Okay, so with a custodian like Coinbase or Franklin Templeton, it's straightforward. The XRP price is the spot price of XRP minus small fees. Okay, so a futures XRP ETF holds futures contracts that trade on regulated exchanges. These need to be rolled over as they expire. So it's like renewing the pizza coupon, basically. There could be minor differences in performance because of contracts. Think of it as storage or refrigeration for pizzas. But generally it tracks XRP's price movements. It's just not perfect. Big thing is a futures ETF does not require XRP directly. Let's take a real world example like gold ETFs versus future ETFs for gold. Okay. So to make it even more relatable, let's consider gold spot ETFs like GLD. Okay. So hold physical gold bars in a vault, basically is what they do. Gold futures ETFs, like some commodity funds, don't hold bars. They hold futures contracts for gold. Both types aim to follow gold's price. So historically, spot ETFs track the price more directly, while future ETFs can have a slight deviation because these future prices can basically be a bit higher or lower than current prices. A phenomenon we call contango or backwardization. Fancy term. Interesting. The same ideas apply to crypto like XRP. The key difference for investors, for an investor or crypto beginner, a spot XRP ETF means I'm directly holding real XRP just via a fund. Whereas a futures XRP ETF means I'm holding a fund that profits from XRP price changes via contracts, but the fund doesn't hold XRP. Okay, so in practical terms, a spot ETF might more closely match actual XRP price and could directly influence XRP's market since the fund buys actual XRP. Okay, a futures ETF is a step removed. It interacts with the derivatives market, not the spot crypto market. All right, now that we have the concepts down, let's talk about who's trying to launch these XRP ETFs and what in the hell's going on with the SEC. The XRP ETF filing frenzy. Who's in the race? So why is everyone suddenly talking about XRP ETFs? What the hell's going on? In 2023, Ripple, the company behind XRP, San Francisco-based tech company, scored a partial legal victory. Actually, 3 out of 4 key elements of the case we're finishing up now, gaining some clarity that XRP itself isn't inherently a security, at least in how it's sold on the secondary markets. This opened the door for traditional finance to take a serious look at XRP. Fast forward to late 2024 and early 2025, a bunch of asset managers said, hey, maybe we can launch an XRP ETF now. What do you think? How many XRP ETF filings have we seen now? A lot. Depending on how many you count, roughly a dozen to nearly 20. According to the crypto media, it's a total of 19 now, I believe, filings that have been put into the SEC for various XRP ETFs. These include filings for spot XRP trusts and for futures-based funds. Okay. In terms of distinct ETF proposals, not counting every variant, of course, it's about 12 unique XRP ETF products, or ETPs, exchange-traded products, for various companies. In short, a lot of firms are in the race here. It's like everyone wants to be first to launch this first XRP ETF. Notable players and their ETF types. Let's name drop a few of these players, a few of these large players. What XRP ETFs are they gunning for? Let's see. Bitwise Asset Management, a crypto fund veteran. Okay, Bitwise was actually the first to file for a spot ETF for XRP. October 2nd, 2024, they filed the Form S1 to create a trust that would hold XRP or spot ETF. We've explained that now. Now you know what that means. This really kicked off the race. Canary Capital, big player here, shortly after Bitwise on October 8th, 2024. Canary Capital, a crypto investment firm from Australia. We love you, Australia. You know we do. Filed a spot XRP ETF as well. These early filings signaled growing interest right after the Ripple legal clarity. A Switzerland-based crypto ETP provider, exchange-traded product provider, teamed up with Coinbase's exchange platform, and they filed for an XRP ETF in November 2024. This was another spot XRP ETF application aiming to list on CBOE BZX exchange, one of the stock exchanges. Wisdom Tree, a major US ETF issuer, filed the December 2024 spot XRP trust. When traditional firms like Wisdom Tree jump in, oh shit, you know it's getting serious, dog. They manage $100 billion in assets and decide XRP is worth a shot all of a sudden. Wow. Grayscale Investments. You might know Grayscale. They have an existing Grayscale XRP trust, which accredited investors have been using. In January 2025, Grayscale applied to convert that trust into an ETF. This is a spot ETF conversion plan, basically. It's, okay, so proposed to trade on New York Stock Exchange, okay, if it's approved. It's similar to what Grayscale's trying with their Bitcoin trust conversion that they've been working. Fun fact, Grayscale filing was acknowledged by the SEC in February 2025, giving it an official review timeline. Franklin Templeton, can't leave them out. A huge asset manager, over 1.5 trillion AUM assets under management. Franklin jumped in March 2025 with a spot XRP ETF filing. They plan to hold XRP with Coinbase custody and are the largest traditional fund manager in the XRP ETF race. The SEC was supposed to give it an initial decision by May 25th, but they delayed Franklin's decision to June 17, 2025, which is pretty normal. ProShares. Does the name ring a bell? ProShares? Huh? Does it? ProShares launched the first Bitcoin Futures ETF in 2021, mind you. They're applying that strategy to XRP. In January 2025, ProShares filed not just one, but several XRP ETF products. These include a ProShares XRP Strategy ETF, likely holding XRP futures. Even ideas like short XRP ETFs, a bet against XRP's future price. Right? ProShares used a form called N1A for some filings. Okay, which hints that these filings are futures-based when we see that. They even had plans to launch as early as April 30th, 2025, according to some documents, but ProShares publicly denied the rumors. They're in the mix, focusing on XRP Futures ETFs, possibly including leverage or inverse versions. In March 2025, Volatility Shares filed 3 XRP ETFs, one regular XRP ETF, a second 2-time leveraged XRP ETF, and a 1-time inverse XRP ETF. So yes, leveraged XRP exposure, definitely futures-based. Since leverage inverse requires derivatives, this shows you basically that's how creative issuers can get. This is what they do. It's not just these plain, vanilla type funds. Okay. Another one, Rex shares with Osprey. In January 2025, Rex teamed with Osprey Funds to file an ETF Opportunities Trust. That includes an XRP fund. Okay, so this appears to bundle multiple crypto ETFs, XRP Bitcoin plus some meme coins, whatever, under one umbrella. So this is interesting. Okay, it's like a framework for offering several future ETFs. Okay, and they can be launched products like ETF, like an XRP ETF alongside a whole host of others. Okay, so think of it as like a multi-ETF filing. It's very interesting. Tuttle Capital. Similarly, Tuttle filed for a series of 10 crypto ETFs, daily leverage products. Under one trust, they do this. One of those targets XRP. And again, it's about offering possibly a leveraged or managed features. Teucrium, I believe I'm saying that correctly. Teucrium? Here's an interesting one. Teucrium is known in the commodity space, and they have a Bitcoin futures ETF already approved under a different route. But in April 2025, Teucrium actually launched a 2-time leveraged XRP futures ETF on the New York Stock Exchange. ARCA Exchange, ARCA. Okay, its ticker is XXRP if you're interested in checking that out. And it provides twice the daily performance on XRP's price. This was the first XRP-related ETF to go live in the U.S., and it's a futures-based leverage product. Bloomberg's ETF analysts commented on how odd it is that the first ever XRP ETF to hit the market is a leveraged one before any regular spot ETF. But it did happen, and Teucrium's launch shows that the features-based can sometimes slip through faster because they don't require the SEC to approve a new spot asset. They rely on existing regulated features frameworks. Okay. Now, I'm saying, wow, that's a killer lineup. Holy shit. As you can see, multiple firms from crypto natives like Bitwise, 21 Shares, Coin Shares, Canary Capital, Wisdom Tree, Franklin, ProShares. Come on. This is crazy. They're all vying to launch an XRP ETF. Okay. Some are aiming for the spot XRP ETF, others for the future, including exotic leveraged versions. Super important, BlackRock and Vanguard. You know who they are. Monster asset managers. They've not yet vied for it. Actually, I think BlackRock just did this today, by the way. Pretty sure. Or at least they're setting up for it, and it's pretty obvious. I saw some news on this today for another video. They've not filed for an XRP ETF as of yet, BlackRock. They have made waves, okay, filing for a Bitcoin ETF spot version in 2023, but they're sitting out so far on this one with XRP. Who knows? That might be because they typically go for the biggest, most established assets first, like Bitcoin, larger ones, like the one that starts with that E word that we don't like to say on this channel. Or perhaps they're waiting for clear regulatory green lights, The absence of these giants, it's noted, the industry chatter, we get it. I mean, it's no problem. Plenty of the others are charging ahead. It's okay. Current status pending, delayed, approved. Who knows? What's the status of all these filings? Who the hell knows? Here's the deal, though. None of the spot XRP ETF filings have been approved as of yet. Okay, the SEC has officially acknowledged many of them, though, which starts the review clock ticking. I'm not sure how long that is. There's a time period. And I think it's a year. And now we're waiting, just playing this waiting game. Okay, so by law, once acknowledgement, but the SEC has, I guess it's not a year. I think it's like, it's over 200 days. It could be like 250 days or something like that, 240 days to approve or deny an ETF application. Basically, they have. For some reason, 240 sticks out. Okay, so if the SEC has up to 240 days to approve or deny an ETF application, typically they use every bit of that timeline. Okay, often issuing delays at 45 days, 90 days, etc. This is typical behavior from them to extend the decision. Okay, for instance, the SEC was expected to rule out a batch of XRP ETFs in April 2025, but it postponed its April 13th decisions for several, including proposals from Van Eck, Rex Osprey, Tuttle, and ProShares. Okay, so as mentioned, they pushed back Franklin Templeton's initial deadline from May to June 2025. Okay, so this is standard procedure. It happens all the time. Delay, delay, delay. And maybe eventually, decide what we want to do with this, our decision on your ETF, whether or not to let you go ahead with it. No outright denial has come yet for XRP. Okay, so it's actually encouraging. Okay, it means the SEC is at least considering them seriously. We know they are. The final deadlines for the first wave of XRP Spot ETFs fall in late 2025. Okay, so for example, October 25 is when the SEC must give a final yes or no to applications like Grayscale's 21 shares, Bitwise, Wisdom Trees, etc. Now, and that's if they don't decide sooner. So we might not see a spot XRP ETF approval until late 2025 or potentially earlier if the SEC does decide to approve a bunch in one go. They just may do that. But crypto enthusiasts, of course, are hopeful that one might sneak in there through 2025. And, given the momentum, like Polymarket betting odds, putting it around, I would say, I think it's around 79% chance by the end of the year. Okay, so let's remember, though, optimism runs high in the crypto circles. We like to be bullish in the crypto space. And if we look at the other side of the coin here, we just saw a Futures XRP ETF leveraged, okay, has already launched. Tecreum's XXRP and others could launch without needing an explicit SEC spot approval. Okay, I didn't realize that either until recently. Futures ETFs are typically registered under different regulations. Okay, so they still have to file with the SEC, of course, but since the underlying futures are regulated by the CFTC, Commodities Future Trading Commission, and trade on CME or similar CME, CME is Colorado Mercantile Exchange, or similar exchanges, the SEC has been a little more lenient. Okay, so in fact, ProShares and Volatility Shares XRP future ETFs could potentially go live once their registration is effective. The SEC doesn't object, if we assume that. The rumor about April 30th, 2025, launch for ProShares. No, we're at May 1 now. Okay. It's okay. ProShares clarified no launch. It was scheduled for that date anyway, so not a big deal, but it's a sign that futures ETFs might roll out quickly, and even as a flashy spot ETF hog in the headlines, In summary, status check. Spot XRP ETFs pending, not approvals. No approvals yet, just delays as of now. Futures XRP ETFs, at least one launch, 2-time leverage, possibly more to come. Since these don't face the same approval gauntlet, we're just going to have to see. None have been outright denied thus far, but none of the spot filings have been withdrawn either. So it's a waiting game with cautious optimism is how we're waiting. Why does it matter? Impact on XRP's adoption, super huge. Price and legitimacy. Okay, so we got all the ETF filings in the works here. You might be asking, like, so what? How does XRP affect me? What does that do to the crypto market? Who cares? It's a great question. All right, let's break down this potential impact of this XRP ETF in 3 areas: adoption, price movement, and product legitimacy. Okay, adoption and accessibility first. An ETF or spot futures can massively boost adoption. An asset like XRP can do this. Why? Because it makes investing in XRP basically an easy click and buy. You just anybody can just go ahead and do it. You have to learn the wallet and the whole thing. A typical investor who's crypto curious but intimidated by setting up the crypto wallet. If a spot XRP ETF exists, Jane can just go ahead and buy shares of XRP ETF with her Fidelity or Robinhood account. It's so simple. And bambo, she has XRP exposure. This lowers the barrier to entry. Suddenly, retirement funds, pensions, individual 401ks, they could all allocate XRP via an ETF. Okay, it's huge. It's big stuff. These are channels that currently don't exist. Okay. A futures XRP ETF also increases accessibility, though in a slightly different way. Okay. Institutional traders who might not want to hold XRP directly due to custody rules or compliance or whatever, they could use a futures ETF to get exposure that way. Okay, so for retail adoption, a spot ETF is simpler to understand. This fund holds XRP in terms of real adoption of XRP, like using it for payments or on other networks. An ETF doesn't directly cause people to use XRP for transactions, though. Okay, but it does greatly increase awareness and ownership. If a lot of investors indirectly hold XRP through ETFs, the ecosystem around XRP could grow. Okay, for example, more demand for custody services, more discussions of XRP in mainstream media, etc. Ripple CTO David Schwartz, the genius that he is, he once suggested that if ETFs get approved, it could spur institutional adoption and potentially drive up XRP's usage and value. It's a sign that big finance is accepting XRP. Price movement. Let's talk price movement, huh? Let's talk price. What do you say? What could an XRP ETF do to XRP's price over time? Spot XRP ETF approval. This is generally seen as very bullish for price. Why? Because the spot ETF, well, you'll have to buy and hold large quantities of XRP, okay, to back the fund. That creates real buying pressure in the market. Okay, so let's think of it like huge buyers stepping in. Past examples when gold ETFs were approved or gold's prices saw a significant uptrend happen, okay, as ETFs accumulated a bunch of bullion. Okay, so if an XRP spot ETF, especially from a big players, if that gets approved, you can expect a wave of XRP buying to occur. Okay, as the fund is created and as investors pour in. It's not financial advice. It's usually what happens when something is structured as such. This could drive XRP's price up, especially in millions or billions of dollars as far as the inflow into the ETF, the XRP ETF. Some crypto analysts have thrown out bigger numbers. Okay, for instance, there's talk in the XRP community that prices could skyrocket with an ETF, with even $10 price targets cited by influencers to 14. We actually have kind of like a nice $14 price target on the charts for TAYs that we're expected to hit, and we can cap out by the end of this year at XRP. It's not financial advice. That's what we're seeing. For context, XRP's all-time high around $3.84, $3.85. Back in 2018, right before the SEC lawsuit was slapped on him, and it's not even funny, but it's been much lower, and it's been much lower since then. While $10 XRP, $14 XRP is certainly possible. Okay, on the optimistic end, we're pretty confident that this is what we're going to see. What's certain though is that new demand for an ETF. Upward pressure. We saw a smaller example when Poland's first spot XRP ETF launched in 2023. Okay, so XRP got a little price bump. A US spot ETF would be like that scenario, we think, but on steroids, just shooting the price up of XRP. Now, on the flip side, if an ETF ever had to sell off, okay, so say like a market crash, yeah, that could, the added selling pressure, yeah, we get what that would do. But generally, the initial approval, it tends to be a net positive excitement and drives the price up. We know that the downside is always possible. Futures XRP ETF launch, another thing to consider. The effect on XRP price is more indirect in this case. Futures ETF doesn't directly buy XRP, so it's not sucking up XRP supply and making it more scarce, but the futures markets and spot markets are linked by arbitrage. So if a ton of money does flow into an XRP futures ETF, it could lead to more futures buying, which can influence sentiment and indirectly the spot price. Arbitrage traders will buy or sell XRP and keep the futures in line with spot. And so in this case, it could move. The impact is usually smaller though. Spot ETFs, it's still notable, but it's smaller. One thing to watch, no arbitrage equals divergence. Okay. What do you mean by that? If, for example, an XRP futures ETF becomes super popular, the futures price might shoot above the spot price contango, which could either pull the spot price up or cause the ETF to underperform. That's why many in crypto feel a spot ETF would be more effective in boosting XRP's price directly. Liquidity is a fair point. ETFs can bring in more liquidity, good for price stability long term. But around decisions, approvals, denials, you might see volatility spikes. For instance, if the SEC suddenly approved an XRP ETF tomorrow, XRP's price would likely bump, usually prior and then dump off once the news comes. Conversely, a denial or even rumors or denial could trigger a drop. Who knows what happens? Never financial advice on the channel. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and tap that bell icon, please, so you can be alerted when we put out new content. We already see XRP's price reacting to ETF news. Okay, so when the SEC delayed decisions in April 2025, XRP had a couple of red days, underperforming in the market. It's okay. So short-term headlines will cause swings. We know that, okay? Over a 3-year span, what matters more is whether XRP ETFs actually launch and attract investors, large investors. That cumulative demand, okay, this is what's going to cause tailwinds in price, not financial advice. Market legitimacy, this is a big one. Legitimacy, a lot of people ask, is XRP finally legit in the eyes of the regulators and institutions? Getting an ETF approved is basically like getting a badge of legitimacy, okay? It signals that the SEC is comfortable enough with XRP markets to allow mom and pop type investors to get involved through regulated products, okay, ATPs or exchange traded products. For years, the SEC rejected every spot ETF Bitcoin filing, citing market manipulation, surveillance concerns, and a number of other things. The fact that now multiple XRP ETFs are being considered means the narrative is shifting. Okay, we have a sea change here. If approved, an XRP ETF, especially a spot one, would basically declare XRP is mainstream enough for Wall Street. That could erase a lot of the stigma from the earlier SEC versus Ripple lawsuit chapter. Even the process of filing is making XRP more legitimate. We have the New York Stock Exchange, CBOE, NASDAQ, major stock exchange operators filing to list XRP ETFs now. Okay. They wouldn't touch it if they thought XRP was an illicit or totally untrustworthy asset, right? So legitimacy is already improving concerning XRP, how it's viewed. How does this help the average XRP holder? Not financial advice. It could lead to more partnerships, more integration of XRP in traditional finance, and even more favorable treatment by regulators worldwide to XRP. Okay, if the U.S. approves an XRP ETF, other countries, they might follow suit. They probably will, okay, or at least feel more comfortable with XRP. And then it's like a domino effect, right? So for acceptance, as far as acceptance goes. Additionally, institutional investors, the big money coming in, they often have mandates that only allow them to invest in regulated products, okay? So as a U.S. ETF opens the door for those trillions of dollars of institutional capital, get ready to consider XRP as an investable asset class. Whereas before, XRP might have it was off limits to them and their investment policy, their structure, what they were able to handle. But now there's a profound shift in legitimacy, and we're going to see how this plays out moving forward. In short, an ETF equals a giant stamp of approval in the eyes of many. Okay, even a futures ETF, which the SEC tends to approve before spots. It adds legitimacy through its kind of the SEC saying basically, we're okay with XRP derivatives, but we're still iffy on XRP itself, which is fine. A spot ETF approval would be the ultimate green light indicating the SEC is comfortable with XRP's market structure, basically exchanges, pricing, etc. 3-year outlook scenarios for XRP. All right, now let's put this all together. Let's look ahead here and ask, okay, what might the next 3 years hold for XRP in different scenarios? Okay, let's consider 2 main scenarios. One where only futures-based XRP ETFs roll out, but spot ETFs remain unapproved. Okay, or another where an XRP Spot ETF gets approved and it launches. Okay, so there's also the pessimistic scenario where neither happens or neither happens, but given we already have a futures ETF live and so many spot filings, it seems unlikely at this point that would happen like that. Okay. Scenario 1, futures ETFs only. Okay, spot ETF delayed, denied, whatever, doesn't matter. In this scenario, suppose the SEC continues to drag its feet on the XRP spot ETFs, okay, or even denies them. Similar to how they handled Bitcoin for years. We remember that before they approved. Okay. However, futures-based XRP ETFs, including leverage or reverse products, they proceed to launch. Let's figure that they do. Okay, through 2025 and 2026. Okay, what does this mean for XRP by 2028 if that happens? Adoption. We'd see moderate growth in adoption. Okay, futures ETFs can attract some institutional trading activity, which is huge. Maybe by 2025, a handful of one-time or two-time XRP futures ETFs are trading in the U.S. with decent volume. It's fine. This will keep XRP in the conversation on financial media, okay? And this is important, but the impact on retail adoption, it might be limited. It's okay. Many average investors might still shy away because the futures ETF is a bit complex and often labeled for active traders only. The existence of these ETFs still increases familiarity though. Okay, so some percentage of investors might use them to get XRP exposure in retirement accounts, for example. Overall, XRP's holders base, it would likely grow. This is important, but it wouldn't explode, but it would grow. Okay. Another thing to consider here, price outlook. Okay, without a spot ETF, the big wave of direct buying, it might not materialize. We don't know. XRP's price would still be driven largely by crypto market cycles, Ripple's development, for example, new partnerships or network use cases. Okay. And macro factors this could affect. But I would expect that the ETF narrative keeps an underlying positive bias. Each time a futures product launches or a step's taken, you might see mini price upticks. This happens. XRP could still perform well in the crypto market. Many analysts think 2024 or 2025 could be bullish for crypto. Okay, it's plausible that even with spot ETF for XRP, it could reach or surpass previous all-time highs. $5, $6, $7. Not financial advice. Please tap that subscribe button. Please tap that like button and the bell notification. Thank you. Especially if a major adoption occurs, like banks or payment providers using XRP, if this continues, but this could drive it too, but really high targets, like $5, $10, even $14, they might be harder to sustain without the extra push of ETF inflows and real world adoption of XRP by banks, institutions, integration with SWIFT possibly. Okay, we might see spikes that fade. Who knows? For example, futures ETFs alone might help XRP gradually climb. We don't know. That's yet to be seen. The mid-single digit dollars by 2028. I think that's a given. I think we're going to have to see. It's not financial advice. We could see mid-single digit prices by 2028. Who knows? provided the crypto market's still expanding. We think it will. If the overall market is flat, XRP could still appreciate due to improved sentiment and usage in the real world, like I said, but maybe at a more modest pace. Who knows? We just don't know. We're just going to have to see. At least we're going to surpass, all-time highs, hopefully. That's what we're looking for, some price discovery. XRP would continue to be seen as semi-legitimate, okay? So the SEC would allowing futures products, but not spot, is basically, that's what happened with Bitcoin. This is the same thing with Bitcoin. 2021 to 2024. It's a half measure, okay? There'd likely still be a camp at the SEC saying, we're not comfortable with spot XRP ETFs because of potential market manipulation that could occur, or because crypto exchanges, where XRP trades, might have the surveillance sharing agreements that we want as the SEC. So these things to consider. This could keep some larger institutions on the sidelines, waiting for full spot approval until these things are worked out. The fact that futures ETFs are trading means that the Commodities Futures Trading Commissioner, CFTC, and the financial industry acknowledge that XRP is important and it matters. Ripple in the XRP community would likely keep pushing for clarity. We might see continued legal or lobbying efforts to get spot approval. Who knows? But in this scenario's 3-year span, they were talking about here, who knows? It hasn't happened yet. So XRP is legit enough to be traded via derivatives, but it's still not given the ultimate green light. Hopefully it will soon. This is somewhat similar to how things were for Bitcoin, like I said, in pre-2024. You could trade Bitcoin CME futures, ETFs on those futures, but it had no spot ETF. Okay, Bitcoin still did pretty well in price during that time, but I mean, but many argued a spot ETF, would have opened up the floodgates. Okay, expect the same kind of talk around XRP. We're already hearing it. Price will do whatever based on crypto trends, but with an asterisk, of course. Okay, imagine what could happen if a spot ETF gets approved. Holy shit. That anticipation could itself keep speculative interest alive in XRP. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and tap that little bell icon for us, please, so you can be alerted when we put out a new video. Now, in summary, a futures-only scenario. XRP will likely experience a steady growth and adoption if this happens in price, okay? But maybe not the explosive growth that a spot ETF might catalyze. By 2028, XRP could be higher than today, possibly significantly in price, several times higher, but perhaps not maximally capitalizing on institutional interest just yet. We'll have to see. The crypto market's broader condition will be a big factor. ETFs alone don't guarantee price moves. They're only one piece of the puzzle. All right, that's the deal, guys. XRP ETFs, they could mark the next monster chapter in XRP's story, bringing the crypto to potentially millions more investors and elevating its status in finance. Okay. Will the number of filings reach 25, 30? Who knows? We're at 19 now. It's already a crowded room as of now. It shows how much excitement there is around bridging XRP with the stock market, which is what this is going to do. If you learned something new in this little video today, would you smash that subscribe and like button for us, please? And tap the bell notification so you can be alerted every time we put out a new video. Thank you. I love breaking down this complex crypto information for you, putting it in layman's terms. I really enjoy it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for choosing us to be your place where you come in and learn crypto. We'll catch you next time. Crypto Info, Blockchain Made Easy with your host, Frank the Crypto Tank, signing off. I love you guys. See ya. Catch you next time. All right, cool. Are you telling me you want me to start? Is that code for start?
Yes, sir.